Oh yeah, before we start, I can't claim to have any proper good knowledge on jiu-jitsu or martial arts, so you'll have to carry me through anything like that.
Oh, don't worry, man.
Same.
Just
Don't
Don't worry about it.
bit of a fanboy just for UFC.
Yeah,
we've got some good, I think there's some good connections within jiu-jitsu and martial arts in general, as well as like and stuff. Like, because I know we've been doing regular sort of Zoom chats with club members and stuff as well, just seeing how everyone's getting on and trying to do some stuff, encourage people to do things and whatnot and talk, because it is hard, isn't it, when you lose something that you do like
massively
5 times a week that you rely on for your own time and space. And
well, we can talk
like
about
part of people's identity, pretty much. So it's really tough. We'll save it for when we're not on now, are we?
I'm recording, but we haven't actually officially started.
Oh right, okay, cool.
A lot of the stuff I'll cut out.
Yeah, so a few bits of snippets in case anyone says anything interesting. So there's never usually anything before.
Yeah.
No, not usually. There's not usually anything during either.
That's why we're dragging in other interesting people to help
to make
it on the line.
Using the word interesting generously.
That's right.
Yeah, very generous. Go on then, Sam. We might as well.
Welcome everybody to another isolation edition of the CJ podcast. Here with my man again, Nick Daines. We've also got 2 very special guests with us. We've got Lorna and we've got Callum. Callum's from Sporting Minds UK. How are you doing, Callum?
Oh yeah. Thanks a lot for having me, Sam. Really looking forward to it. Yeah,
awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about Sporting Minds UK.
Yeah, so I'm the founder of Sporting Minds UK, and we're a new mental health in sport charity. We were founded in it would have been late 2019 officially when we would have got going. So do you want to just hear a little bit about the backstory, or
please. Yeah, please.
I don't want to drag on forever, but
no, please.
Yeah, so I was a cricketer at Worcestershire. So I was an academy cricketer, sort of in and around the professional cricket setup. And in 2018, I finished my A-levels at Malvern College, a school at Worcestershire, where I was on a cricket scholarship at. And I went into a really busy schedule of playing cricket back to back, pretty much, every day. And sort of transition from the sort of youth, just playing it for fun and recreational, more into the sort of professional sporting environment. And in that summer, started going through some mental health issues, and essentially through those issues, I got to experience the support system that was on offer to me at the time for cricket, and actually do some research into what organizations and support mechanisms were out there for this topic. And I basically got to see that there wasn't really much in this field. The support system that I went through, I didn't feel was good enough. I didn't feel like there was enough awareness in place for mental health in young sports people. And then crucially, there wasn't the support system there in terms of a charity that could offer it for free for the athletes that needed it. And so in my gap year, basically, I sat down and tried to create it myself, and hence Sporting Minds UK was created. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think you found a niche that's like, I used to play a lot of cricket, and I think I was obviously not quite the same standard as you, but I wanted to play professionally. And then when I realised I wasn't good enough to do that, you do all the things that you're supposed to do. And then when that's quite a hammer blow, because you pretty much planned out, what you're going to be doing for the next 15, 20 years. And then that changes things significantly. I mean, I stopped playing basically. you know, when I was about 24, because I tried to carry on playing just for pleasure, and I just couldn't.
Yeah, it's hard to switch back.
Yeah, I just couldn't really, you know, so, you know, for the fun and stuff of traveling for a long time to get to away games, and you know, the training commitments and all the rest of it, because, you know, still in like a sort of domestic division like the Premier League in Kent or whatever, you know, it's a decent standard, but a lot of the games are a long way away, and it's a whole day, you know, there's a lot of work and training to go into it, and after a while you just think, I just think, you know, I don't know if I find this that fun or want to continue doing anything to do with cricket at all, and definitely felt for a while.
Yeah, I think with sport in general, you know, if you're, whatever sport it is, taking it, you know, really seriously and want to become as good as you can, there is a certain sort of time when that particular sport for you becomes, you know, less about enjoyment and more about trying to just further your, whether it's a career in it or, you know, furthering yourself in competitions. There is unfortunately that crossover between playing it just for pure enjoyment and actually then playing it for, you know, proper competition or furthering yourself in that field. And that was that was a really interesting sort of topic around sport that I didn't really feel was discussed that much and, you know, talked about and represented. I think there's a massive perception of a professional athlete having, you know, the absolute dream lifestyle. You know, we see things like, you know, guys on loads of money and at Premier League clubs, you know, and professional international athletes being pretty much the desired lifestyle, especially for youngsters. That's, you know, actually from being on the inside briefly in that sort of environment, I saw that that's not always the case, and a lot of the time it is a job like any other, and there are things that can creep into your job, and that can really, you know, mean an athlete starts to struggle. And that's essentially, you know, a massive inspiration behind the charity, trying to give that a little bit more of a voice, so to speak.
People have been quite vocal in the last couple of years, I think, not just in cricket but in sport in general, around mental health issues and how they can. But it's I think when you're talking about your experience and the kind of age group you're looking at specifically, is one of the ones where it's almost like there's a lot of guys who've been in the sport, played professionally, internationally, and then are struggling with lots of things or pressure. But there's the bit before that about all the guys that, you know, are there or thereabouts, you know, up until 20, age 20, 22, something like that. You can be in the twos or whatever for 5-7 years. You can be doing it, but not as successful as you want to do in all these sports, and then just get cut, and that's that, and you're done. Right now, get another job, do something else, and you know, the wages are nowhere near what people would imagine them to be, especially in cricket. It's you know, I think back in my day, you'd probably be looking at first. I remember a friend of mine was on a development contract at Kent that was 7,000. So you know, now it probably, like, I used to compare it to sort of teachers' wages, probably kind of around the similar sort of thing. But the other pressures that go with that, even if you get into any sport for a bit, trying to get in, trying to get on, trying to get selected to the first team and perform to try and to secure yourself as a regular position for that contract. You know, if that doesn't happen, you've put some good years into that, and with very little outside of cricket experience for the real working world.
And I suppose what you've also done is created like almost an identity for yourself. Some of the things we've experienced a lot is, you know, athletes who from age sort of 10, 11 all the way through to 19, they're known as, you know, the footballer in their area or the rugby player amongst their group of friends and family. And then all of a sudden, if you know, your whole childhood, you're known as that person, and that's your identity. And then someone at 19, 20 tells you that, no, you're not good enough, or, you know, you experience an injury or something that stops you from being that person. It's a massive blow. And even little things like family members, saying, it happened with me when I stopped playing cricket, representatively. People still, like the decorator come around saying, oh, how's cricket going? Have you got a contract yet? And all that sort of stuff. And I was like, no, I haven't. I've been sacked off. So it can come to a really abrupt end. And when it does come to that sort of abrupt end, it's also like that, little bit of childhood dream that's taken away from you, which is can be really, really tough. Which is why we wanted to try and get that support system in place to just try and like soften the blow in those sort of instances.
Did you find not a lot in between? Okay, Callum, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. Off you go, and then there's nothing that fills that gap from you going, oh, okay, because it's going to take obviously quite a long time for you to process what's going on, and if there's no support from the county or another type of body like Sporting Minds, then that's a big void for someone to come to terms with on their own.
Yeah, massively. You're pretty much just released into the open world. Like, go and find a job, go to uni. Don't bother us anymore. Basically, it can be pretty brutal. I mean, it's because there's a lot of athletes in systems, and there's so many subsections of academies. There's trialists. It's hard for the sporting the sporting governing bodies in all sports to look after each player, properly, because there's just always constantly going to be players that are, getting released or, not formally getting released, but being asked to stop playing for that team. It's almost like a sort of losing battle if the governing bodies are going to try and care for each single person. So that's why, an organisation like Sporting Minds is hopefully there to make the governing bodies, hopefully stronger, more compassionate organisations that can actually care for the players better. It's a really big issue. We also want to deal with professional athletes that are still in the system, young academy cricketers that are still in the system, because obviously, mental health doesn't discriminate just to the people that, experience adversity or lose their way from sport. But yeah, the void that's created when a young athlete's released can be really, really damaging and actually lead to a real slippery slope. So yeah, that's a massive part of what at Sporting Minds we're trying to fill, really.
I guess it can happen through injury as well, right? So if someone gets like quite a bad injury, that can have a real big effect, because although not professional or on any kind of level like that, like coming back from an injury can be really trying on the mind as well. Even to a sport like, for me, after I injured my knee, and coming back to jiu-jitsu was a bit of an uphill fight for me to try and get back, because my knee's not really ever been the same. And I was you have expectations of yourself, I guess, because you can do certain things. Then when you come back after an injury and you have to maybe change those things, and the way you play that sport or do that sport is quite tough as well. Do you deal with things like that?
Yeah, massively. And it's so sort of like specific to sport, isn't it? I mean, there's no other career path or, industry that sticks out in my mind where like an injury can properly stop you from doing the thing that you really want to do. Yeah. And also it's one of those things that to a large extent is pretty uncontrollable. Like, I had a stress fracture in my back that stopped me playing for a year. And I know there's been loads of cricketers that have experienced that. Rugby is filled massively with injuries as well. Yeah. And 90% of the time they're pretty uncontrollable. And when you have a player that constantly gets injured, their potential is good enough to play the sport at a really high level for a long period of time, but for whatever reason they keep getting injured. It's really like hard to watch. Yeah. It's just can be a constant battle, not only physically but then mentally, because you just feel like you're never going to get back on that road to recovery. Yeah, it can be really, really tricky.
Yeah, we we were talking about like maybe potentially kind of flipping it from an outside point of view for people who use sport for their mental health. For, like say they've got stresses at home, whatever. Like a lot of us, I know, especially in jiu-jitsu, we get a lot of people come in who need a bit of relief, and that kind of this kind of sport provides it. And I think, do you ever deal with anyone from that kind of angle rather than just someone already deep within the sport that's injured and can't play anymore potentially, but use that as a crutch for them?
Yeah, well, a lot of
what do they do?
Yeah, a lot of athletes that we work with come from a really sporty background, and so the particular issues at hand are rarely sort of involved with a lack of sporting activity. But I've definitely seen instances when not from the point of view of the charity, but from my own personal background, instances where lads have taken up different sports. And I know a lot of organizations and teams, especially at professional level, really encourage a multi-sport athlete at a young age. Just because it can, as you say, like have a real release. If you're a an academy footballer, or if you're on the career path for one sport, being able to play another sport just for pure enjoyment, is going to be massively beneficial. So you haven't just got the one sport that you play, properly seriously, and no other sports to enjoy. I think I always used to hear, even though I was pretty ordinary at any other sport myself other than cricket. The coaches always used to bang on about multi-sport disciplines. It's definitely beneficial.
You do anything enough, and it becomes a career or a job.
Yeah,
definitely you lose some of the pleasure from doing it. And the training required, if the higher level competition that you're engaging in, you're going to lose some pleasure, aren't you? So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, massively. I was as a sort of 9-10-year-old, like the keenest cricketer you'll ever see, like properly absolutely loved it. But then stages when I got older in the past few years, where the pressures come in, you feel like you really need to be doing well, that I'd want it to rain. I'd want the game to be called off, just because it was so mentally straining at times. And that's common with a lot of athletes, particularly my experience in cricket. I see that a lot, like the joy of some cricketers when it's raining and they don't have to play is like it really surprises you.
You'll pray for rain. The rain does. But like cricket's one of those as well, that it's like the torture is often elongated because it's such a long game. Like football, 90 minutes, you're going to train, but 90 minutes it's kind of done, and you can sort of escape a little bit. In cricket,
switch off after.
Yeah, in cricket, you if you're not batting, you're thinking about going into that, and if you're out, you're thinking about, oh God, well, I only did this or I didn't get that, and it sits with you for a lot longer during the actual playing day, I think.
Is it the pressure of competition that does it, or
in terms of when I was on about not wanting to play?
Yeah. So like if like the guys, they're excited about not going onto the cricket pitch because it rains. Is it because of the constant pressure of competition all the time, or is it pressure on themselves to do well, or maybe a mix of all?
I think there's a mix. For a lot of the time, it's physical fatigue. Athletes in that sort of environment are playing all the time, so a rest day is always like welcome, really. But then that's mixed with those personal pressures that athletes put on themselves as well. There could be a million different scenarios. You could have lads out of form, not doing very well, that want to sort of have a little break, but they can't because they're constantly competing. But I'd say very, very commonly it's that just desire to do so well that can sometimes just drive people absolutely crazy. And especially when they're in sport, when the bad performances start to pile up, it seems like it's harder and harder to get out of that pit, so to speak. And you know, that's when we see athletes start to experience mental health issues, when those pressures start to pile up. It's not sometimes one thing that causes these issues. Sometimes it's a build up of 2-3 years, and you know, I imagine longer in some cases as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because like listening to that, it's kind of, you can see some parallels. Like, I mean, not just from a sporting point of view, but like I run my own business, and it, like what you described there, can be very similar. You want to do really well for yourself. You want to do the best you can, and you know, those consistent pressures build up, don't they? And it can be really hard. Like that's kind of why we were interested. Lorna kind of brought this up because we were chatting before about mental health, and Lorna, the reason why we got Lorna back was because she was the one that suggested doing a podcast on mental health, and I thought it was a really good idea. Just from a perspective, like kind of last year, we got a dog, and he basically had like real bad separation anxiety. So for the best part of a chunk of time, I had to be at home with him because my neighbours were complaining. There was a lot of issues here with the dog. So my wife works full time, and she can't really, and I can kind of pick and choose my hours. But I was kind of felt like I was a bit trapped being in the house with the dog all the time, and my business started to kind of like come on a downward spiral. Took a bit of a drop. And then all of a sudden, like I just felt all the pressure, like there's just so much pressure to look after the dog, pressure to do well with my business and then keep it up. And from that, you kind of lose the love, and it was just real difficult, like situation. And it's just really, really interesting to hear that from a different point of view as well. But it kind of all rings parallel. I
think also like I think to be a professional athlete in any sport, you need to be a certain. Well, first of all, you need to be good enough, but secondly, you need to be really suited to it. You know, your character, your demeanor. You need to, you know, properly live and breathe it, and be suited to that sort of environment. And I on sort of reflection, after leaving that, you know, environment where I was trying to become a professional athlete, I probably realised that I just wasn't like a competitive enough person. You know, I'd be playing with lads in teams where, you know, all they'd be focused on was, you know, winning at all costs, both personally and with the team. You know, even in little games outside of the game itself, like in the warm-ups and stuff, just like constantly competitive all the time. And for me, it just didn't mean anywhere near as much to me. You know, I had other stuff that I wanted to focus on away from sport and competition and cricket. So that's why I think, you know, sometimes you have to be, there are anomalies, you know, all the time. And there's obviously different characters involved in professional sport. But for me, I just don't think I was probably, you know, competitive enough or the right sort of person to go into professional sport, really.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Like, it's funny you say that, like the competitiveness in the warm-ups and stuff. You see that in amateurs as well. We get that at jiu-jitsu all the time. Still happens now, and we're not even professionals.
Well, I can say so.
Automatically assume that if someone's very athletic, if they're exercising a lot, then they probably won't suffer from mental health problems, because exercise is supposed to be so good for your mental health. Well, that's probably something that gets overlooked.
Yeah, definitely. Like one of the things, actually, like in the first like week of thinking about starting the charity, I remember we were on holiday, and my mum actually said like a lot of mental health, you know, tips or whatever for people who are experiencing issues is to play sport. But then what about people who already are active, you know, and already are really involved with sport? So yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like it's a lot of the sort of go-to thing for treating mental health seems to be physical activity, which I massively think is really beneficial. And you know, things like Tyson Fury, how his medicine for his mental health issues was getting back in the gym, but also as you say, that angle of people who already are really physically active, when they get mental health issues, it's often not a suitable remedy. Yeah.
That's interesting, because as well, like, especially coming from a gym point of view as well, like working in the gym, you get those people who use that as their that's kind of a part of the problem, is maybe issues like body issues or whatever drives them to work extremely hard in the gym, but that's probably not mentally good for them or physically good for them sometimes, so it's kind of they do work.
Yeah, I think everyone's mental health is specific to them.
Yeah.
And that's one thing with Sporting Minds, that every inquiry we get and every athlete that we treat, they receive a proper consultation, and that program that we set them up with Bupa is 100% specific for them. There's no sort of template really for mental health, and that's something that the charity tries to get across as much as we can.
Amazing.
Do you have people from? So I've seen on your website that you've got lots of different ambassadors from across lots of different sports. Do you find that there's any kind of anywhere where people come to you from more, or is it kind of the issues are it doesn't matter what sport, the issues are the same across everything?
Well, in terms of the sport, I mean, the first two inquiries we got for support from athletes, like one was a professional footballer and one was a professional dancer. So there we saw, like, the first two inquiries was a massive difference in sports. They're two completely different sports. In terms of the ambassadors, we've got quite a wide range of ambassadors, and luckily we've seen engagement from loads of different sporting backgrounds. In terms of the issues that arise, that there is more sort of depression and anxiety based stuff than, say, eating disorder things, but again, it's at the moment, because we're quite a young charity, there's quite a small number of case studies to go from. Definitely, again, just like the sports and the types of sports that we cover, there's no mental health issue that we won't treat with Bupa. So definitely any issue that we encounter, then we're gonna do our best to try and cover it. Yeah.
That's also, because I kind of imagine, like, whatever the sport, if someone's a professional athlete, I don't think it matters necessarily what the sport is. You're going to experience the same anxieties performing in front of a crowd or your own personal performance, and it's going to be the same stuff, whatever it is.
Yeah, definitely.
Job security, what's happening in your career, when the contract's up, whatever it is, it's going to be across the boards. I'd have thought that kind of pressures.
Yeah.
The systems and the way people can deal with it in themselves, and like I know there's hardly any of this stuff available like that long ago. So within clubs and stuff anyway, I know they talk a lot about there's sports psychologists and things like that in terms of
a lot of performance-based stuff.
Performance-based, exactly, performance-based stuff, but not necessarily like the example that springs out to me immediately is Jonathan Trott. That one, I think, was he was at the he's playing for England at the highest level possible.
You might have to explain this one to me, Nick.
Cricketer.
National cricketer playing for England, doing very well, has his critics and that kind of stuff, but ended up coming home from a tour abroad because of mental health issues and not being able to cope with the pressure that he felt under, and that was the end of his career basically.
And when was this?
2013, 14, early 2014, yeah.
Right.
And a lot of people called him weak, if I remember, like on the the general sort of public perception was, you need to toughen up. If you're a professional athlete, you need to be mentally tough and all that sort of stuff. I just think that was down to a lack of education. But I think we've sport as a whole has come quite a fair distance in that time.
Yeah,
which is crazy because that's not that long ago.
No, it seems mad.
Yeah, but it's super interesting, and I just think it's a massive issue in professional sport. And then you can look at everyone that does everything. I mean, with what we do, like everyone, you see people are anxious, people get cross with how they did when they go training, and it's all for us. It's everyone's working full time, and you put the effort, try and do everything you can to get better at the sport that you like doing, and then training, and then it's you comparing yourself to other people, and then all this kind of stuff as you go through it. It's very similar, but you kind of from the position where you're doing it because you love it and doing it as much as you can, and it's a release from all the other pressures of work, family, life, and all this stuff. And so I think you can find both things, as Sam was saying about it being you release from the almost like day-to-day existence, and then if you can't do it, like at the moment, it's everyone I know sort of is struggling with not being able to train very much or anything at all.
At the moment, right? You must
exactly. It's got to be like that, all over the place. I'm imagining when this comes to an end, there's going to be a backlog of issues that people are gonna have to need help with, varying degrees. But because we were talking about this the other day, Lorna, as well, weren't we? What people are feeling like, in lockdown, not being able to train or get to the gym and have that part of that. It's a big part of our lives, isn't it? And I worry about what it's going to be like.
Yeah,
it's had very different effects on very different people. I'm actually feeling a lot better mentally since our quarantine situation, but some people I know are struggling massively.
I feel all right in this quarantine situation. I just thought I was a hobo. I like just being here at home, but I quite like it. I enjoy myself.
It's funny, like some people you phone up, you speak to them, they're like, "Oh my god, hi, so good to see you," and then some people they open their front camera and immediately they're just like.
I think it's quite an interesting period because I think when we come out of this lockdown, obviously no one knows when that'll be, but a lot of people from this experience can actually sort of take time and reflect on what actually they could cut out from their life when everything goes back to normal.
I feel like I'm definitely using it as an opportunity to do that as well.
We've essentially gone back to square one in terms of our socializing, and so we can actually see what we could cut out or what we want to cut out when things go back to normal. So I think there are benefits to it. Definitely.
Have you been enjoying it, Callum?
Yeah. I've been all right, really. I mean, I've gotten into Fortnite.
I see,
So,
by the way, I know this is completely off topic, but talking of Fortnite, did I see something that Travis Scott did like a whole concert within the game?
Yeah, I watched it the other day whilst playing Fortnite. Yeah,
isn't that cool? I think that's absolutely mad. That blew my mind the other day.
Really, really cool. It must have taken a lot of time and a lot of money to create the visual effects for it. It's ridiculous.
It was crazy. I only saw a snippet of it, but it's mad. The fact that you have to be in the game to get that is mad.
It made me feel a little bit strange that I felt like I was at a concert whilst playing video games. But I've gotten into Fortnite, which eats away a little bit too much time, really. But so I've gotten into that. Other than that, I've been okay, really.
Do you deal with any guys from esports at all while we're on?
No, haven't. I mean, I probably need to get more educated on esports, but
I think it's quite an up and coming thing.
Yeah, massively.
Sorry.
Massively.
Esports, what is this?
So basically, esports are like competitive multiplayer computer games. So basically now, like, there's loads and loads of money being thrown into esports because people, through streaming and watching people on streams, they want to watch the people compete on certain computer games. So I know like Fortnite is a big one. I think people can win money by winning certain Fortnite.
A lot of money, yeah.
Yeah, there's tons of money into it. But like, it's interesting because I think I was reading somewhere that they're starting to look into people doing drugs within esports because people use these kind of supplements to. I think.
Are you actually active when you're doing it, or is it just?
No.
You're literally sitting there with the controller.
Not very active at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine. You know, taking drugs to increase your alertness or something.
Yeah, so I think it might be that. Is it Adderall?
I don't know.
One, that ADHD kid.
Adderall, the American. Well, you know.
But it keeps you like focused.
Yeah.
I think that's quite a big thing in esports. So I'm wondering whether, like, not just from that point of view, you know, if there are drugs in that kind of bigger sport and there's money in the line, whether those kind of mental health issues from, you know, the stress of competing, the stress of being the best all the time would translate over there as well.
Yeah, well, they definitely will. We, as a charity, we haven't had any experiences in esports at all. But I imagine it's one of those things like in 10 years' time, you know, kids in 10 years' time will be like, why? What, you didn't think esports was a real sport back in 2020? Yeah. Like it'll probably be that. I mean, you know, I can't imagine, you know, professional athlete being like a FIFA player. But you know, if the amount of money that's in that industry is
there probably already is. There probably
yeah, it probably is. I've probably made myself look like an idiot.
They have to play Mario Kart to de-stress from their professional.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
right.
It's really interesting.
It is interesting.
And UFC Fight Pass, have you got a subscription to that?
I have got a subscription to Fight Pass. I haven't been watching much on there recently though.
Well, the good event the other day, Submission Underground, with
really?
grappling. Chael Sonnen's grappling.
Oh yeah.
And the headline was Craig Jones and Vinny Mangalish, and it's a particularly nasty submission.
Really?
Yeah.
If you not, obviously we're quite into the grappling side. But
I'm into. I'd say that I'm more into the guys that just smash people's heads off.
Well, we're into that as well. Don't
we like that too.
We like that stuff too.
Fair enough. No, I love UFC. I sort of, you guys might not want to hear this, but I basically got into it through the sort of Conor McGregor hype train back in like 2015.
Do you know what? I think that's all right. Like there's like whatever gets you into it.
Yeah.
You know, I think people just don't like. I think people don't like Conor McGregor because he's like popular.
The purists, and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, you know, and the fact
if he's fighting though, I'm going to watch it.
Yeah.
Like, I want to. You know, there's these things. It doesn't matter whether you like these people or not, but you can respect what's going on and what they're doing. And
person that if he walked into Carlson Gracie like with his arms down like this, you'd be like, please.
I really got into watching on YouTube the series that Dana White did.
Saz is Sam's favourite. This.
I love this.
Looking for a fight. Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. Did you see the latest one? It's not that new, but the latest one.
I don't know how new. No, I'm not sure.
They go to Hawaii and they have to jump off.
Oh no, I have. Yeah. Is it Dean Thomas? Dean Thomas.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, with him. But I found that really interesting from like a sort of, you know, how he structures it as a business and how he looks for fighters, and also like how these, even though you only got to see it for like 10 minutes or 5 minutes, but the stories of these fighters were literally like, for a lot of them, this is the like make or break moment in their career. Yeah. They got this fight in front of Dana White. You know, he on many occasions literally hands out contracts after
Yeah.
the fights,
Yeah.
or
That's
says
got to be
beforehand,
planned,
like,
right? They must know. They must know.
I know, yeah. And he says beforehand, like, I'll give the guy that wins, I'll give the guy that wins a contract, like, I'll take him on and stuff. I'm thinking, like, oh God,
Yeah.
it's huge. So
Yeah.
like, you're literally watching like guys' careers come to,
The
yeah.
contract is tiny though. It's like 5,000 to 5,000.
Yeah.
Probably for $300 though. You know.
Oh man, yeah.
So $5,000 for a fight.
I think they start with the UFC contract. I think it's 20 and 20, isn't it? I think they get 20 grand to fight, 20 grand to win.
What, for a win bonus as well?
Sorry?
20 grand to fight and 20 grand for a win bonus.
Yeah.
It's all right.
It's all right, but apparently it's not. Well, it's not that. If they only fight once a year or whatever, it's not that great, is it?
I suppose.
Fight camps, food like rent,
Yeah.
memberships. Apparently, it's like nothing.
Well, then you can get a lot of them get lots of other sponsors, don't they? You know, so
Yeah, I don't know about the UFC anymore though. I think they can only
the
get
fighters not get their own personal sponsorships for.
I think that's
brands
that's the case. I think that's why Brendan Sharp's quite vocal about it, isn't he? That you can't get sponsorship money. Well, you probably can get sponsors outside, but I don't think they pay as much because you have to do stuff for them. You have to, because when you get
otherwise you're basically an employee of the UFC.
Yeah, when you're in the octagon with everything.
Yeah.
Over your shirt, it means like a lot more people will see it, won't they? Whereas if they don't follow you on social media or whatever, and you've got a can of Monster in your hand at all times, it's not really going to be
That's like you.
Yeah, where's my Monster?
Like the way that Dana White and is it the Fertitta brothers or something?
Yeah.
Like
Not anymore, but it was. Yeah.
Well, yeah, the way they the way they built that brand. Make it huge. It's literally talked about as if it's a sport, like in its own sense, but actually it's MMA, and then UFC is the Ultimate Fighting Championship. But like a lot of my friends will actually see UFC talk about it as if it is an actual sport.
Yeah.
We'll come into
actually
got a bit of training.
Got a bit of UFC, mate.
Yeah.
Bit of watching it on telly.
A couple of my friends have actually gotten into watching the UFC and then taken up MMA, and one of them actually had a couple of fights, which was really, really cool. Something that I like for some reason when I watch the UFC and watch MMA, I think like a little bit of me thinks, I could give that a go. I don't know.
You're still young.
And then I think about it and think, no, I'd get absolutely destroyed.
That's why jiu-jitsu is great, because you can do jiu-jitsu and not get punched in the face.
Yeah.
But
sometimes depends who you're rolling with.
Well, if you're rolling with Mark the Otter Wright, one of the white boys, he's so mal-coordinated that he ends up punching you and kneeing you in the face anyway. Sorry, Mark. Like jiu-jitsu is great, and I think if the guys that go out and sort of train specifically MMA to like have MMA matches, they only will do a few things for the MMA. Whereas like if that's your goal and you want to get in a cage or a rig and fight and punch people, that's great. But the jiu-jitsu is so technical and so interesting and fun for that. If you want to get involved in any kind of combat sport, I would say jiu-jitsu is the best. Like
it's like a science, isn't it?
Oh, we all love it, obviously, but it gets boring when you're trying to explain why you like it to other people, because it's very difficult to explain. But it's just there's so much you can't just automatically. Some people are more naturally talented or flexible or this or that. But whatever you are, you can build your game with the moves that are available to get better.
It seems like one of those sports that you've got to put like hours into. It's not something that someone can just turn up at, and like football or rugby, where you see some athletes or lads that just really athletically gifted and just take to it within a few days of trying it. Like I kind of
take an athlete and then you can turn them into a rugby player. If they're an 18 stone guy that can run the 100 meters in 12 seconds,
Yeah.
You'll make a professional rugby player out of him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like, although Lorna comes in and she can do all the moves really easily, so I guess some people can.
2.5 years, but thank you.
Lorna, that's nothing.
I was also, I think, like during that sort of period of, I don't know when it probably was, but sort of 2013 to 2016, when the UFC started to get loads and loads more attention, and MMA started to become more of a like well-known sport with people like Ronda Rousey and Conor McGregor and things like that. I was also like at a boarding school, like living in an all-boys boarding house. So as the sport started to take off, like living with 6 other lads, like everyone started getting into MMA, like probably not in a very controlled manner. So that there used to be like lots of MMA scraps bursting out on a Friday night after everyone's had a tired week, and people try and replicate all this stuff. It's almost like WWE when they say, "Do not try this at home."
It's tough. It's happened to, like, I remember, because me and my friends, that's how I got into jiu-jitsu, was because I watched MMA beforehand.
Yeah.
And I was like getting really into it, and I was like, I want to train, but I don't want to get punched in the face. So that's how I did. But when I started training, I started doing jiu-jitsu, all my friends were like, "You can't choke me. You can't do this. You can't do that." So there was load when I started. I was choking out my friends all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
challenge me all the time, and I'm like,
yeah.
"Oh, man, so I will."
It can be really.
It doesn't happen anymore.
It can be really annoying, like when these lads start to get into it as well, because then when you get older, and like I was in sixth form and stuff, you try and be, the older lads try and push your weight around a bit, and then some like 15-year-old just gets you in some sort of lock where you think your shoulder's about to burst out. What's going on here? Like, you need to take it back to basics. But yeah, it's I found it really fun until I got hurt, and then that's when I realised probably just not cut out for it.
Really. I've had one injury. I've had one injury since I started jiu-jitsu, and that was a broken toe. And that's just got stuck on the floor. That wasn't because someone actually broke it. It just got stuck, and the rest of my body went in a complete different direction.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's the nightmare, that is. Getting your fingers or toes caught in the mats, it's the worst.
Yeah. I can imagine it's probably a bit of a misconception. Like the whole not wanting to get into MMA or jiu-jitsu just purely for fear of getting physically injured. I can imagine is that a bit of a stereotype?
Yeah, I'd say, especially, but the risks are higher because you're kind of attacking joints, and you're kind of putting people's bodies into positions that they don't want to go. So the objective is different, isn't it? So the risks are higher. So there's definitely going to be some people that wouldn't want to do it because, like, I didn't really want to do MMA because I didn't want to get punched in the face. I didn't want to ruin something so beautiful.
I worry about my fingers, for the typing on the keyboard.
Yeah. But it's true though, isn't it? Because I mean, one of our guys from our club got injured. He hurt his knee, and he was off work for 6 weeks. So it can have a realistic effect, and can actually, stop you from.
Well, quite a few. Yeah. You do it for long enough, and there's going to be some injuries, isn't there? I mean, what, Sam? Is it one knee or two knees? Just one knee.
One knee for now.
One knee surgery.
Doesn't sound too good at the moment. But
there's lots of people who've had surgeries, with knee surgeries, shoulder surgery, all sorts of different bits and pieces. Broken. Not too well. Dan broke his collarbone.
Yeah.
So
no, that was a while ago when we. If you listen to the previous podcast, Lorna, you'll know all about it.
Well, I would say that you should go and check out, see what jiu-jitsu's around. But that's the most intimidating thing, I think, for anyone. It's not so much the worrying about that. I think it's the perception of the people that do it. Yeah. And so no one wants to wander in somewhere because they think everyone's like these super big tough people or whatever, and it's like, oh, hello, I would like to do jiu-jitsu. But actually, I think everyone, like, predominantly, I've never been anywhere and trained with people that are total dickheads. Like, everyone's usually pretty cool and chilled. So
Yeah.
I could highly recommend that. If you get into it, like, you'll absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah.
That comes part and parcel of getting beaten up and stuff all the time, doesn't it? You don't get a lot of people who are arseholes like stick around just because.
It seems
get beaten up all the time. Your ego can't take it, so you just.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Actually, it seems from the outside, it seems quite a humble sport, and a sport that's sort of built on respect quite a lot. But obviously, you guys all say whether that's true or not. But it seems like that from the outside.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, if someone was tapping, say if you had a submission on someone, you wouldn't just keep cranking it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you, Lorna?
Sam.
If I get somewhere on Sam, I would, but I got to get there first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, like Joe Rogan's massively into his jiu-jitsu, isn't he? I listen to his, again, very mainstream of me. Listen to his podcast a lot.
You're getting pretty counterculture now, appearing on this podcast. It's definitely great. I can say we are not mainstream yet, although we had a guest yesterday in Canada, and then we've got another guy who's in Canada, and then we've got hopefully a black belt world champ.
Wow.
So we're starting. As soon as we're in lockdown, we're kind of like, right, reach out to people, see who.
Yeah, they're not doing anything. Yeah.
People who as well, like you, it's like it's really interesting, and there's a lot of comparisons. Although you're predominantly dealing with professional sports people and stuff. That's how it starts, and then I think lots of the things you're saying come through to all levels of people dealing with everything.
Yeah. It did for me. I thought, 100%. There are lots of similarities there.
I think what made me right about what you were saying earlier was kind of when you were doing your professional sporting and stuff, it was like being in a different world, and then kind of coming back out and not being able to do that anymore was like coming back into civilization kind of thing. It kind of felt like for me. Because I was a professional dancer of sorts for a little while, and I think now trying to find like a real 9 to 5 is just really bizarre.
Yeah.
Because I think like it used to be quite a well-paid job for not a lot of hours, and now I look at like a job that I'd actually want to do and find rewarding, and I'm like, oh, but comparatively it's not very good, and I'm like, oh, am I not worth more money than that? And
I think that word worth is like really, really powerful. Someone that I've known pretty much all my life, he was a rising star in cricket, played England under 19s, went on to a professional contract. He was a pro cricketer for a few years, and then he got released. And I was talking to him last year, and he said, when you're known for being that, like we were saying earlier about it being your identity, you are that special person in that field. And then you leave, and you get released or whatever, or you have to leave because of injury, or you retire and you go into another job, because in most sports other than really football and a couple of others, you have to work after you've finished playing professional sport. And he said, I went into my 9 to 5, but someone said, that's where you're sitting, this is what you've got to do, this is when you can leave, and that's it. Like you're the same as everyone else. You're not this special athlete anymore. And a lot of people's sort of estimations of their own worth come crashing down really when that happens, because you get taken into this whole bubble and this whole world where at times you can feel pretty much invincible, and it can be really humbling and really quite brutal when that does come to an end, which it will for everyone.
I think as well on that, like people definitely, you can be a big deal. I mean, cricket's a great example because again, like although lots of people will know who people are who play for England, things like that. Normal county cricketers are not very well known, but in the field of cricket, if you play cricket, They're very well known.
Yeah.
So if you're in cricket all the time, and you'll be able to tell me if this is right or wrong, but my perception of it was I would know most of the county players because they would play in the Premier League. For different clubs, you play against them or with them.
Yeah.
And you kind of, or this person knows that person. You see them at training. You do this event with them, or that, or this, or da. And then, but so for them, everyone wherever they go knows who they are within their.
Yeah. You're like your own little version of a celebrity, yeah.
Exactly, within a really tiny kind of, a big pool, but like it is God's worth. But it's most people in general don't know who Darren Stevens is.
No. If you walk to someone just in the co-op or something, and said, "Do you know who Darren Stevens is?" You'd be extremely surprised if they did. But if you go to a cricket ground, especially in the area. Then, there you go.
What I find interesting is it must be coming out of that and then going, someone goes, "Well, I don't know who you are. So you play cricket? I don't care. I never watched cricket for my life. Sit down at the desk."
Massively.
Right. Well, kind of like I'm kind of a big deal in cricket. It's a very, very tiny part of the rest of the world.
Oh yeah, I think I imagine that happens with other sports as well.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be a really useful thing for more athletes to recognise that there's such a bigger world out there than their own sport. I see a lot of cases where people get wrapped up in the bubble of their own sport, way too much, and they literally think that there's nothing outside of that. And then eventually, when they do experience the rest of the world, it's a massive shock to them. But yeah, especially in cricket, everyone loves a name. Like even from when I was playing in representative stuff, like names getting flown around all the time. Everyone knows someone, and it can get really, really annoying actually when you're just constantly hearing names flown about. And
yeah. Pick it up. You dropped another name.
Yeah. Oh, I know. There's someone that I'm at uni with. You probably won't mind me saying, but he's a massive name dropper just all the time. Like whenever there's a conversation going on, if he can hear a little name that he thinks he knows, he'll drop it in there. Or if he's having a chat or trying to tell a story, he'll drop a name in and try and make out that he's mates with them. It's quite funny. I hope he doesn't listen to this now, but
I'm very surprised if he does.
Yeah, I'll be extremely shocked.
But it's it is. I think that like there's a couple of really interesting points. That thing of worth, like Lorna was saying there, it's also placing it with the finance that the money you earn for doing something that potentially you enjoy, or like don't have to spend as much time doing it, or for perceived from everyone else that it's not really work playing a sport, or going and training and getting things cooked for you, or being told what to do. That sounds great. I mean, I did similarly to you, sort of look back and think, actually, I don't think that being a cricketer would have suited me, because of, if you're on the county circuit, for example, and similar to football, but county cricket lasts for 4 days a game. So you're staying for potentially 5 or 6 nights, or driving to and from very late or very early, wherever around the country. You're away from home an awful lot. And, Joe Denley, so Sam, who works with me, his brother plays for Kent and England and this and that. And, he was off in for the IPL for a month. Then had to go to the West Indies straight from there for sort of around this time last year for the Test series over there. Then back, and he's kind of back for very, very short periods of time to reacclimatise and kind of see his kids and all this stuff. And it's like there's a lot going on within someone's life that gives you a lot of thinking time as well. So I reckon cricket's got to be one of those sports up there with more mental health issues, just because of the separation from your normal existence during your regular job.
Definitely. I think there's some sort of stat out there. I mean, I won't be able to quote it exactly, but the amount of working days that a professional cricketer does in the year is loads. If like you say there, if you play a 4-day game, then the day before you're probably training or traveling to, if it's an away game. The day after you might have 1 day off, and then you're in again. The day after that for rehab, or probably to travel again to the next game. It is literally back to back to back, and also because with cricket, it's obviously played in the summer, and we don't really have a long summer, and they try and fit in as many tournaments as they can, and often that leads to just constant game after game after game for the cricketers, which doesn't give them much recovery time. So that's why there's such a packed schedule.
For going abroad in the winter potentially, so that's still a thing, isn't it? I played a season in Australia in between English seasons, and after that I was like, this is too much.
Yeah.
Like, I've played 3 seasons on the bounce without stopping. Like, it's just stupid.
It's crazy.
And play maybe 10. Like, I think Daniel Bell Drummond played in Australia and maybe played 10 or 11 games, I think. But and had a nice little kind of 2 months, maybe 2.5 months, something like that. But you do that, and then you don't, and then you come back. You've got whatever short format tournaments where you can earn some more money. So the cricketers are like, again, they're not. It's not football money. So
you've got to try and make as much as you can whilst you are a pro cricketer. Yeah.
Whilst you're an asset and someone's going to pay you, you'll go anywhere to try and earn the money.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's what it seems to be like. I know, that's why jiu-jitsu is really cool, because the top people in the sport, they're like Gordon Ryan's, and we were talking about this the other day. They are still accessible. Like, you're not going, and cricket's exactly the same.
Yeah, it must be. Yeah.
Like, it's not that hard to go and meet one of the cricketers if you want to.
No.
But like, this is
probably apart from some of the Indian players, they are treated like absolute gods. Yeah. In England, it's very different a lot of the time.
Cricketers are scum of the earth. No one cares about cricketers, basically. Kind of, apart from Melissa, like when I was young, I'd be like, I've got to get whoever's autograph. That's what I really want. Amazing, because you love it. But like, in reality, actually, you can just wander up there and go and say hi if you want to. They're just there training anyway. But yeah, so you can have private lessons with Gordon Ryan. He probably charges more now, but I think it was $500 to $1,000 for an hour. And he's like the best. So it's all relative, isn't it? It's still a lot of money. Yeah. But if that guy's the best in the world, it's amazing, really.
Yeah, I wonder how much a private lesson would be with a footballer or something.
Oh.
Yeah, well, I imagine they just never even entertain that. Especially if you message Ronaldo and be like, I'd like an hour with you to show me some of your skills. He'd just be like, well, yeah, all right, it's 5 million euros.
I think people don't see the work that goes in before you're turning a wage and things with. Like,
100%. No, that's.
You think about Natan, who came over to our club he's from Brazil, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was like camping out in gyms. He was staying in people's houses. Like,
yeah.
I hope you didn't mind me saying that.
I'm sure he won't listen. Don't worry.
It's like that thing, though, isn't it? If you're coaching or even in like your job, so someone comes to you for advice in your job, and you say, right, this is what you should do. So you go to Sam, and then Sam for a PT session, and it's however much it is for an hour. It's because of all the work and knowledge that he's gained like beforehand that gives that value to it, obviously. But you just kind of, it's the different value that society places on different sports or different people that's interesting.
It all comes down to the popularity of the sport and how many people watch it on TV, really. So many more people watch football in England than they watch cricket or athletic. Well, apart from the Olympics, just naturally, cricketers aren't going to be in the spotlight or in the limelight as much as footballers are, and then that leads to less money involved in the game. It leads to less opportunities once you've retired in terms of TV work and stuff like that. So they all have. There are obviously pros and cons and stuff, but yeah, it's I think that it goes back to that perception of a lot of people think if you're a professional athlete, then you've got everything for you, and a lot of the time it's just not the case. Even with football, with the high salaries, there are a lot of really tough times for pro footballers. Whether that's constantly moving around, not being able to start a family and things like this. It's definitely one of the things we try and get across from the charity's point of view, that just because someone's a representative athlete or a professional athlete in whatever sport, it doesn't mean that they have this perfect life, and they themselves shouldn't see themselves as being bad or being not appreciative if they don't feel like they have this perfect life. So yeah, it's a really complex, interesting dilemma, really.
One of the biggest from huge wealth and notoriety and all of the trappings of that to basically nothing is the NFL. So in America, you can play you play this incredible standard through college football training all the time, like literally scholarships in to do this and that, but you're not professional. Well, you're not supposed to be being paid when you're at college, but there'll be 100,000 people watching at these stadiums, right? Then maybe one or two people from every college, or maybe none from one and two from another, will go into the draft, and then you get drafted. Once you get drafted, then you've got a career in the NFL, unless you get injured. But for the rest of the guys, whatever.
I think the most famous case is The Rock, isn't it? He tried to get into the NFL, didn't make it, and ended up playing in the Canadian League, was it, for a little while? And then he got real bad injury.
Did he play in the NFL? Or
no, he didn't make it. And
he's not his character in Ballers, is he? But
right. No, Nick, he's a real person.
Well, yeah.
There's someone called Inky Johnson, who's actually a motivational speaker now. But he was similar, like real a college athlete, doing really, really well. Got into sort of the eyes of the talent scouts for NFL, and basically got told pretty much make it to the end of the season, and we're gonna pick you in the draft on a multi-million dollar contract. And then he got a career-ending injury in the sort of penultimate game of that college season. And he came from a real poor background. So I mean, it's almost unthinkable a scenario like that, where you think you're going to be on this. Well, you pretty much get told, in a couple of games' time, we're going to be giving you this multi-million dollar contract to take care of your family, buy your parents a house, and then not only a career-ending injury in terms of your sport, but also in terms of the finances that you can earn.
Yeah,
it's it's ridiculous.
Well,
so harsh.
Yeah, imagine telling you, someone telling you can't do what you wanted to do. Someone went to you, Nick, and was like, can't play, you can't do jiu-jitsu anymore, mate. That's it, it's done.
Yeah,
it's devastating, isn't it?
Yeah, well, especially when you do something like that you want to, because American football's different, right? Isn't it? Because it's very physically demanding. But as far as I can tell, maybe there is some maybe representative teams or other leagues, but it's not really any amateur like American football in America. So it's kind of like,
I think there is, but I don't know what it's like.
Do you know what I mean? Like a weird. So if you those good football players over here who don't make it, and then they because they play like lower league or they do this or they that, they can still be like that guy who's he's really decent. He plays for this club, so you can still carry on having some of that identity. Being in the paper, the local paper, and stuff like Hall scores 3 goals or whatever. And with that sport, there's nothing like. You can carry it on unless you make millions doing it professionally, or that's it. You don't bother playing it again. You just have to every week.
Yeah, which must be tough as well. If you don't make it, and then you watch the lads that you thought you were potentially better than or just as good as, and then you have to watch them, live in that lifestyle, especially with social media at the moment. posting these pictures and playing at the weekends and stuff like that, and you think that you should have been there or you were just as good as them, it must be like doubly tough, because you can't get away from the thoughts of, you know, what could have been for athletes that don't quite make it, especially in those extreme situations like Premier League football and the sports in America.
For people's mental health, I think social media is probably, like, if you're already on the edge, it's just quite often that thing.
I think social media is like an amplifier, isn't it? You know, whatever you know, attitude you have or feelings you have towards a certain thing, you know, social media can either, you know, amplify it negatively or positively. We've tried to use, you know, social media for good in terms of, you know, the ambassadors that we get on board, trying to basically, you know, a similar way to how Instagram influencers work, but trying to use it for a good cause rather than to, you know, necessarily sell stuff. And we've found a lot of success in that, you know, trying to positively influence people through social media.
That's exactly what it's really for, isn't it? That's what.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, there are cases where social media is massively harmful in sport. And it comes back to that sort of sense of identity and the lifestyle and things like that.
Yeah.
It almost seems like these days it's more about the lifestyle and the material stuff rather than what used to be, like, you know, when I was at school and there'd be people who everyone wanted to be a footballer, and the kid, you know, people would say, I do it for free, I just want to play football, and like, you know, and I think that's now, I read somewhere that in a school people are like, what people want to be, and some people are just saying, like, I want to be famous or want to be a celebrity, like, but what do you want to do? Like, what's the thing you've done to make people know who you are? Like, and it's now just a thing that you can be famous for doing it all, you know, like from these reality shows or whatever. And none of that is helpful to anyone growing up, anyone young. I'm just glad it wasn't around when I was your age. Like, this didn't exist.
Yeah, like, I've chatted to lads my age, and they're like, yeah, I really want to be famous. Like, well, I mean, it's a ridiculous cause. It's like, well, you know, murder someone, then you'll get famous doing that. Like, a lot of the time, people would rather be famous for bad stuff than do good stuff and have no one know about it. It's well,
that's like the same thing on. I see this a lot on LinkedIn, right? Is so people they can't do something nice for someone without taking a photo of it or writing. You know what I mean? It makes my skin crawl. Oh, look, here's a photo of someone I bought a meal for and gave him 50 quid. So what you're saying is you are so generous and wealthy that you are giving someone 50 quid. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
you can't do it thanklessly. You have to do it publicly, so someone goes, "You're the best person."
Oh, that's so good. You're such a great guy. But you know, so they are only looking for the affirmation for themselves rather than
It goes back to that, like, David Brent character from The Office, doesn't it? I don't know if you guys watched it.
Yeah. You know what? Weirdly enough, we only watched it recently. We've seen the episodes of The Office, but we watched the whole thing, both series. It's amazing.
The main character there, David Brent, just literally just wanted doing anything he can whilst the cameras are on him to make him famous and be loved. Yeah, it's a
very
recurring theme.
Yeah,
it is. It's so true. It just gets more and more like that, I think. Like, I mean, and I'm not down with the kids as such. I mean, my social media is not exactly very exciting, but you know,
I like it, Nick.
What? It's just pictures of the gym
and your dog.
Oh, my dog, yeah. So it's a wholesome Instagram.
Wholesome content, yeah.
Like a month ago, Nick was like, I didn't know what stories were on Instagram. I don't know what stories are.
And now look at him, you can't stop him with his stories.
No, well, I still can't work out some of the things on there, how you get different things to make it look quite so good. But, you know, every picture, I haven't posted very much, to be honest, since I've been on lockdown. So I think about 2 or 3 pictures. There's not much to report, so.
Yeah, fair enough.
But you do look at these things, honestly, sometimes it does make me think that, like, you can't police that stuff particularly, you know, so you have to put things in place help people understand what, the detriment of this, how it can be impacting your mental health, because I think it's all mental health stuff.
Yeah.
It's, 100%. And there's nothing. I remember at school, but I'm sure that this was a while ago, but there was nothing. No one mentioned anything ever in mental health issues at all. And that's that's not that long ago, really. I don't know what it's like now. You guys are younger, but I can't imagine there's much of it, because everything used to be done by just teachers.
Yeah.
I feel like as soon as you start talking about it, the people you're talking to about it are like, oh my God, me too.
Yeah.
You never would have said it if you wouldn't have brought it up.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's not like that people don't want to be the first to say anything.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a subject that needs a lot of work on in terms of normalizing it. It's still for a lot of people, it can be really hard to talk about. And that's why, a lot of the awareness we try and raise is just to try and get people to open up. It's a really cliche term now because it's used so much, but it is true. And also just trying to get into the mindset of people that prevention's way better than cure. A lot of people, it's like, if in terms of physical health, people don't wait until they're really ill or really injured to take care of their physical health. They do it, progressively throughout their life. But in terms of mental health, a lot of people seem to wait until they've got. I did it myself. Like, I never thought about my mental health until I actually experienced a mental health issue. I think that's a little bit still of the mindset, that sort of reactionary mindset that we're still in. In terms of waiting for a mental health illness until they actually
recognizing points as you're going along and trying to do things to help yourself during. It is like you say, most normal people would do exercises to enable them to do the physical things, unless you're me. And then you get to a situation where you've got really bad back problems and stuff, and then I start doing things because
I think that's a lot of people. I think a lot of people are the same there.
I like the fun things. I like fighting, rolling around, doing the stuff I like, and I don't want to waste any of my free time by doing stretches, Pilates, anything. And now I'm like that. I'll do more of the bloody stretching and things like that to enable me to get on the mats to do the thing I want to do. So I want to have longevity in what I do, and that's exactly the same with mental health. If you want longevity of good mental health, you need to do things as you're going along.
I think it's really difficult though, because it's an internal battle, isn't it? It's not like something physical that tells you, like an injury. Like, I know that's leaving it too long, but it's just there and it's pretty obvious you've got it. Like with mental health, it's on such a wide.
Yeah, you can hide it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very easy to convince yourself. Am I just making a big deal out of something small, and then that's how it can kind of build and
especially when people say things like, "Oh, just man up," or mate, and you're like, "Oh, so I'm the one that's not doing what I should be doing, so I just keep quiet then." And then
I think this is it, because it's on such a big, there's such a big spectrum of mental illness, from very large to very minor, and then people's ability to cope with that mental stress is very different as well. So everyone's experiences are completely different, but on they're completely different in their own. You can kind of relate certain things.
Yeah.
Things.
I think also you've always got to try and avoid those big spikes, like the really high highs and the really low lows. That's that can be really, really dangerous. You just want to I was about to say flatten the curve. That's a little bit
even keel, don't you? Do you know what I mean?
You want if you had your own mental health on a graph, you want it to be really steady, and you don't want those jumps from high to low being too the gradient on that curve being too steep. You want it to be a steady thing that you manage, and if you don't want to be to go really high and have the really high highs just as much as you don't want the really low lows, because that's when the issue do start to
it works kind of that way, right? So you get like a real big high, and then afterwards you're going to get that dip. It's like the same with anything.
Yeah, it's like, no one can continuously go on a high all the time. But you just want to try and soften that blow when you do come back down. But yeah, it's a really interesting subject, and I'm not a professional or anything like that by any means on it. But I do really enjoy talking about it.
Yeah, same. Very interesting.
Well, I reckon we've covered a lot now.
Yeah.
Covered a lot there. Where can people find you, Callum, and Sporting Minds UK, and get in touch if speak?
Yeah, so we're most predominantly on Instagram, which is at Sporting Minds UK. We're also on Facebook and Twitter as well. It's at Sporting Minds _ on Twitter. And then also our website, www.sportingmindsuk.org. That's where you'll find us. Thank you very much for having me on, guys. Really enjoyed it.
Well, we're going to do some stuff as well, and I've got some patches coming, some Sporting Minds stuff. So hopefully we'll be able to get some pictures of people doing some jiu-jitsu in them for you as well. And,
that'd be great.
We'll try to do something as well, maybe at the gym or us guys to try and raise some money for you as well. And
definitely,
that'd be amazing. Thank you really much for the support. It's we're a young charity, and so that sort of support is amazing for us. Thank you very much.
Please share on your portals, because obviously, if we're not already, CJ Podcast Instagram will start following you, and we'll tag you in when this goes out. I think probably in a couple of days or something like that.
Cool. Yeah, sounds great.
Definitely room for another podcast. And
I'll have to take up jiu-jitsu and then get back to you guys.
You got it, Nick. You got one. Nick. Well done, mate.
A conversion. Well, I'll have a look and see what gyms might be near you as well, and see if we'll recommend somewhere.
Yeah. might be quite I don't know, in the Black Country in Wolverhampton.
There'll be something there.
There'll be somewhere. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, guys.
See you later.
Okay, that's all done.